And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, the man who knows how to do the Ricky Bobby stop and then pose for the frame. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
I haven't done that in a long, long time, Kieran. It'd probably be pretty disgraceful if I tried that right now.
Hey, you know what? It's like riding a bike, man. You just need to hear that song one more time, and then you can get right after it. We are recording this, so this is a Black Friday episode. So I want to remind everybody that you can go to tigerterritoryshop.com, use code Black Friday, get 10% off for all your Tiger Territory merch needs, and we appreciate anyone who has done so, plans on doing so. This is a nice opportunity to save a little money and help promote the show, so we appreciate all of that. So that is Black Friday, code Black Friday for 10% off tigerterritoryshop.com. Speaking of going shopping, Cody, the Tigers are obviously in the midst. Last episode, we talked about their interest in one Ryan Helsley. And since we talked, he has talked. He talked to
Mhm.
the Athletic, which I actually think is kind of noteworthy because it's not, I would say, the most common of practices for a free agent to kind of do like what I thought was a pretty thoughtful interview. So credit to your colleagues there for getting him on the phone and getting him talking. And I understand why he did it because, like, this is his time, right? He is finally a free agent. He's going to try to maximize his value. And the way it ended in New York, not the most not the most lucrative of endings. So he's gonna try to frame everything. He's coming like I thought he came across as very honest. I thought he came across as very thoughtful and kind of forthright on what his flaws are and why he's open minded to the possibility of perhaps becoming a starter. So you obviously read it, Cody. Like, what were kind of your thoughts on Ryan on Ryan's words, on him speaking his truth?
Yeah, it came across as like, oh, I like this guy. I
Yeah.
think a lot of players don't talk during free agency for fear of saying something that could hurt their market or saying something that could mess up potential negotiations. But I think more players should do this. If you're just honest, fairly open, like, what's actually going to go wrong? Ryan, he talked about the end of his Mets tenure, the pitch tipping issues he's dealt with. A lot of it was rehashing some of that, but kind of does remind you like his stuff was still really good. Even though he was getting hit, it was almost a little bit inexplicable how well he was getting hit. He was a little too predictable in certain counts. Regarding the possibility of being a starter, that's why we're talking about him. We're going to get to free agent hitters here in a second, but the free agent pitcher we're talking about right now, Helsley, I know what I'm capable of as a reliever, he said. I think I still have a lot to give and can get even better. I've shown what I can do as a closer when I'm in that role. It's a really fun time to be in the game. It's the most important 3 outs of the game, but I still think I'm capable and able to be a starter. I missed starting probably the first half of my career, but once I really started closing, I didn't think about it as much. Learning a new pitch would be something I could pick up, obviously, but it'd be a learning curve throughout this first year trying to figure out how to be a major league starting pitcher. So, perfectly eloquent answer there. It's basically saying, I'm open to being a starter. I'm open to being a reliever. I'll do whatever whoever wants to pay me requests that I do. Um, See, nothing wrong with that. Sounds like he's
10 out
open.
of
He
10.
did more specifically mention adding either a changeup or a two seam. I talked last episode like I think the changeup would make sense to use against left-handed batters a little bit more, but great work by my colleague Katie Wu. Go read that at The Athletic if you would like to see more of Ryan Helsley's words.
Yeah, and I'll also say this: if you go and you read the story from like the Tigers' lens perspective, you you Katie does a great job of kind of outlaying the metrics and the stats, and then you like read his words, and you're like, if his agent was coaching him, hey, this is how you could possibly get to Detroit. I'm not really sure he could have done much better because again, like he was identifying his flaws. He was saying that he's like, open, he is a versatile option as a pitcher just in general. I know, batters are not pitchers. I understand that, but it's like, hey man, I could do whatever, like, hey Chris, AJ, like, what do you got for me? And I thought like there was enough in there that like I was already pretty interested in it, but in a way you just don't really know how guys would frame it. This kind of felt like something that he would actually like to do, and I commend him for it for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is just I don't think we really hammered it as much as we should have yesterday, Cody, or last time we talked. But it's so crowded in the reliever market, and we're seeing, just earlier this week with the Boston Red Sox making a trade. Speaking of former Cardinals, Boston Red Sox making a trade for a starting pitcher, and I think this is him kind of figuring out a way to kind of burst out and make himself more viable. And obviously, there's a financial incentive there, but at the same time, he's laying out he wants to go to a smart team too. Not just the team that's going to pay him the most amount of money. And the Tigers may or may not be that, but I do think that the Tigers would be among the smarter teams that he could sign with. And there was nothing in there that if you're in the front office, you're the coaching staff or whatever, that makes you think like, hey, I don't think I could really do that. I mean, hell, AJ Hitch is probably like, the only thing he did wrong there is he called the last 3 outs the most important outs. That might be the only critique that AJ has. It's like, well, you got to get to the most important outs. So how important are those? Is probably what AJ would say to that. But to me, this does feel like a momentum. Like he's trying to seize on the momentum, and I think it's going to work. I think there's going to 15 teams. I don't know if you know this.
That's what I was about to say. The story says 15 teams have contacted him. Some as a starter, some as a reliever, some maybe as both. If the Tigers want to get this deal done, better get it done.
I think they would be extremely smart to try to get this done as quickly as possible for the reasons that we laid out last time. Getting him ready, figuring out what that other pitch is, and kind of solidifying your pitching staff more or less for the 2026 season, where you can focus on the hitters. So, any other Helsley thoughts, Cody, before we move on to hitters?
They should get it done, but don't do it during this holiday weekend and mess up my plans. I would wait until like Tuesday or something. How about that?
It's 100% going to be happening on Saturday now that you just said that. So we are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to, kind of highlight the parameters around which the Tigers are seemingly going to have to operate when it comes to adding to their lineup, and then who could fit. It's a shorter list, unfortunately, than you think. But first, a word from our sponsors.
If you are still carrying a clunky leather brick that can be mistaken for an old school wallet, may I introduce you to what Eric Kratz is getting himself for the holidays.
I mean, this is the greatest wallet that I've ever seen in my life. Your credit cards fit in here. It's adjustable, lifetime guaranteed. Like this is a must-have for the holidays. Absolute must-have.
Ridge Olive Matte. That is the design that Kratz has right now, and you can get a hold of that. There's over 50 plus colors and styles to choose from over at Ridge. You can even get a wallet that features every NFL, MLB, or college team. And for a limited time, Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com/foul to get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's ridge.com/foul for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about Ridge. Tell them Foul Territory sent you.
All right, coming back here, Cody. There is a reality of the situation that you always kind of have to keep in mind whenever you're trying to assess what the team could do, what they should do, and really that's what's available. You can't go to the grocery store and want a certain brand of barbecue sauce, and they don't offer it, and then you're like, well, I can't get that barbecue sauce then. If the market does not have specific players, specific positions available, then you're going to have to pivot, and that's kind of what we saw last year with the Gleyber Torres signing, right? Is that, Sky Harris got a little bit creative. So if you just look at the Tigers roster as presently constructed, there are definitely holes, and maybe hole is too strong, but there are areas that if you want to take the next step, you figure you're going to have some level of improvement. Unfortunately, a lot of those positions are not exactly what the market is giving you, but we'll just kind of lead off with the top, and that is the guy who's going to define the offseason from a position player perspective, and that's Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman is a guy that the Tigers, and this Tigers regime, was fully comfortable offering a 6-year contract for a lot of money. And that offer is essentially what the projection is. We have the graphic up here if you guys are watching on YouTube for Alex Bregman. The athletic projection is 6 years, $171 million. He's a year older. He did not have a great September, but he's still Alex Bregman. He is still a right-handed bat. He is still a valuable defender. But he already turned you down once when you gave him the best offer in terms of pure dollar amount. Do you go back to the well again when you already have Gleyber Torres at second base on the books for $22 million, and you still got to figure out Colt Keith, and you have Zach McKinstry in tow as well? Are we doing this again?
It's a great question. I think the Tigers have to have some level of interest. Bregman's leadership qualities is kind of exactly what they need. His ability to get on base and hit with little power is exactly what they need. But we've talked about it some before. He's a year older. I think that's a little bit concerning. And he's less of a perfect fit positionally than he was this time a year ago. We went over it. You could just DH Colt Keith a lot, but there are going to be some ripple effects across the roster if you bring in a third baseman, even if you leave Kevin McGonigal in the minor leagues. It's not a perfect fit, but it's still a pretty good fit. It is still arguably the best fit if the Tigers want to get serious about winning a World Series, presumably in their final year with Tarek Skubal. I don't have a lot new to say on Alex Bregman. I think there's going to be some level of interest. Maybe it comes down to, does Bregman want to be in Detroit? Because his infamous quote this time, or in February, he thought he was going to Detroit 90% of the offseason. Red Sox came in with a sweet deal at the last minute, but the Tigers still offered him the long-term deal he wanted. Maybe they could have given him a little more money to get it done, and they probably should have. But I'm not sure we'll ever know the full story of what went on in those negotiations. But part of me wonders if he just doesn't want to come to Detroit, doesn't want to play in Comerica Park, if there's something else, especially when you're looking that the Red Sox may still have some interest, and a lot of other premier teams are going to have some interest. Some of it may just come down to Alex Bregman's preference, and I wonder if that's what the Tigers are going to be up against.
I'm not sure how much it's worth, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. He did hit 364 with a 909 slug in Comerica Park last season. And that's with a couple, make sure my memory's correct. Yes, a couple home runs, to boot there. And that's the tie for the second most of any ballpark last season, with obviously Fenway Park being number one. So that element, anecdotally small sample size for the most recent excursion, should alleviate some Comerica Park concerns for him. If I'm Alex Bregman, I have won a World Series, obviously. Got a couple. I do not I don't have to go to a team that is going to pay me the most because I've been a winner my entire career. Do you want to go down the path of going into obscurity? But you also want to be in a situation that pays you and you have the opportunity to win. Boston fit that profile last year. Detroit would have fit that profile last year. Detroit fits that profile this year. Plus the connection, Alex Cora and AJ Hinch. There's no reason to be anti-Detroit, in my opinion, because you're willing to go to Boston, so it's not a weather thing. So there's no reason to be anti-Detroit. If it's not your preference, I get it, but it should check a lot of the boxes for you. Another thing to keep in mind if I'm Alex Bregman is, how long do I really want to play this out? Because it was kind of a weird thing last year with the Red Sox. Now that got solved, I guess, with the Devers trade a little bit. But at the same time, now they're trying to get young too in the infield. And they got guys that they got to figure out in the infield. So I don't know if they're going to want to give you that kind of same contract. And then some teams like the Tigers might just let you pass by, basically. So the timing for him, I feel has to be at least better than it was last season. Now,
You would
I will.
think, or maybe he learned just wait it out and something a little
Uh,
more like what you want will come along. I don't know.
maybe, but I will. I'll close on this point. The Tigers do feel, if I'm going to kind of give something in their favor, they do feel in a position with, throwing some Colt Keith at third base last year, something we were not privy to at this time last year, with a little bit of stability at first base, something that was not the case last year. You already had Gleyber Torres in tow. You should have a better idea of what a healthy Javi Baez can do for you. In theory, if you really wanted to wait out Bregman, you could do it both ways, where you're all right, awesome, let's go, let's go win a championship, or okay, fine, we got guys that we know we can win with. We went to Game 5 of DS, and we feel like we didn't reach our ceiling last year. So you see what I'm saying? Like there is a little bit of comfort in knowing that you're not gonna ride or die with the Bregman sweepstakes. I think that at least exists now that did not exist last season.
I think that's probably true. I think the front office probably feels that way, but there's still the argument, like, what do the Tigers need? They're at a place where they're getting rid of platoon guys like Andy Ibanez. They don't really need that victory, that like small edge around the margins anymore. I think they need a legit veteran hitter, which brings us to our second name here, Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, if you're not going to go get Alex Bregman or Bo Bichette, you better get real creative and do something we don't see coming, because otherwise I'm not sure how the Tigers are going to take this lineup to the next level. Bo Bichette, you could argue, is going to be a better fit than Alex Bregman, simply because of his ability to play shortstop. Now, grain of salt, as we've talked about before, he was terrible defensively last year, minus 12 defensive runs saved. It was a pretty big decline. He was -3 the year before that, but he hasn't been a plus defender in quite some time. So I think that's the big question. Do you still trust him to play shortstop for another year or two? Because if you do, he could check a big box. We know Bichette's a legit bat. He also seems to be a winner. He's not quite the veteran that Bregman is, but he's been around. He grew up in clubhouses. I feel like he would be a positive influence. The other downside might be just the walk rate. He walks at a below average clip, around 6%. He's been able to mitigate that for the most part by hitting the ball hard and hitting the ball really well. 2 years ago, not so much, but his quality of contact rebounded in a big way. He did have a 342 batting average in balls in play last season, something that might be worth considering. That 2024, you see it on the screen, 0.3 WAR, scares you a little bit. He's projected on the Athletics to get even more than Bregman, and that's probably because he's younger. He's only 28 years old, but you're definitely looking at an eventual move to second base or to third base. The Tigers have a lot of other infielders coming through the system. There's a lot to like about Bichette. There are a couple things not to like about Bichette. Would the Tigers be willing to pay up for a player? That's the thing we don't quite have the answer to at this point in time. But I'm not sure there's a better way to improve your offense than just going and getting a dude.
It would be a home run signing from lifting your offense perspective. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then the other pieces of it, I was just looking this up to verify. He's never logged anything other than shortstop as a major leaguer. So, like, everyone's like, saying like, well, maybe you have to go to second base or third base or whatever. Okay, I would love for him to talk to Katie Woo or you can do it too, and just be like, yeah, I could play third, I could play, second base. He's not going to do that because it's shortstop. You know what I mean? But but I would love to hear some thoughts on that, and then someone who is actually scouting him and has some insight as to whether they think that would be something that he could do at a reasonable level. Because I think if he signs with the Tigers, I don't care about years and money in terms of like status. So like if you sign with the Tigers, it should be part of the calculus is you're probably going to be playing some third. You'll play some shorts. You'll probably play a lot of shortstop, but we might have to just put you at third at a certain point this year, and you're going to have to be okay with that, because if you say that this is part of your profile, which again he hasn't said it, so I don't know, But if you say this is part of your profile, I think if you come to Detroit in this specific instance, it ought to be like relatively like from Jump Street. We're gonna, if we feel like it's better for the team, we're gonna do this. Not like wait around until you're 31, 32 years old. So I don't think anyone's like kind of attacking it that way. But I like the idea. If he is willing to do that, yeah, cool, fine. I don't care about contract status and shortstops, but from an offense perspective, it would be a tremendous addition.
Yeah. I think the other thing the Tigers may be up against here is the Blue Jays. We know the Blue Jays aren't afraid to throw money at some free agents, and they've struggled to sign a lot of the guys they have wanted. There's something about getting players to come to Toronto, I think. Well, Bo Bichette's already been to Toronto, and he's already played in the World Series with the Blue Jays. I think they have a little advantage if they want to make a big offer to sign him. I think he's more likely to get it than maybe other free agents have been in past years. So I don't think you're getting Bo Bichette at a discount. Let's just put it that way. I think Bichette and Bregman are heads and shoulders above most of the other options I can think of. That's why I'm fascinated to see what the Tigers end up doing. Just for the sake of getting to some other names, here's one no one's mentioned in a while. Remember a time this summer when everyone wanted Eugenio Suarez? And now he's a free agent, and there's not a lot of chatter about Gino Suarez. He went to the Mariners. His production did drop off in the second half in a pretty big way, but he still hit for power, and he would still represent an offensive upgrade for the Tigers. There's not a lot of defensive value. He hit 189 for the record with the Mariners after the deadline, but 13 homers. So, I think the big downside with Suarez, and the reason I was not a big proponent of the Tigers getting him at the deadline was the swing and miss. We know that's a problem, and Gino Suarez happens to swing and miss a ton. He punched out 196 times last year. So if you want him to join Riley Green and maybe you could have two guys punching out 200 times, that's what you might be getting. Last year, his power, almost an outlier. I mean, this guy's legit. He hit 49 home runs, and he had done that once before, but I don't think you can count on him doing that, especially in a bigger park. The thing here is that his market, I think for all these reasons and the fact he's 34, his market is not going to be great. So if you wanted him on a 2-year deal, 40 plus million, could that be feasible? Would you be willing to live with the strikeouts to add a 35 homer guy who's a great clubhouse guy and all these other things? I kind of think no. I assume the Tigers are going to be out on him because of the strikeouts, because it's already unclear if they really feel like they need a third baseman. But I think it's still worth talking about, just because if you want to add a little more thump to your order, there's a guy out there that you could probably get on a short-term contract.
Yeah, and you know what? I also think he is somebody that in a, like, other organizations that don't stick to their process but are still very successful would, like, go after Suarez after it's kind of like the first wave where the first wave kind of passes you by. You understand you're not going to get those guys. There's an argument to be made that if you're willing to go after Bregman, you shouldn't like close the door on Suarez options, right? Like I think that's a fair statement because you're obviously open to third base, adding at third base, but the flaws are still there, and the homecoming element would be fun there too. All right, we are going to take a quick break and get to some other names, including Cody's favorite, coming up. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Hey, for all the parents out there with teens, it's more hectic now than ever.
Cash App's going to help, not hurt.
With the Cash App card, available to teens 13 to 17 with sponsorship by an eligible parent or guardian, every transaction triggers a real-time notification for you to see, empowering your teen to practice independence while giving you peace of mind by keeping track of their spending. You can also manage everything directly from your own Cash App account without having to switch between the two. With the Cash App card, you and your teen's balances receive 24/7 fraud monitoring, and if something ever feels off, you have the ability to lock their card right from your phone in just one tap. For a limited time, new Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code FAMILY10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply.
Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partner. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Direct deposit and promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures.
All right, coming back here, Cody, take the floor. We know you love you some Hae-Sung Kim. So why is he a fit for the Tigers? Well, just go, just cook.
Yeah, I'm trying to stop being so annoying about this. He's listed as a fit on the Athletic because he plays shortstop and because he's available. It's not going to take a 6 or 7 year commitment. He's a little bit of an interesting case in terms of like, what do you make of his 2025? He missed most of the season recovering from a shoulder injury. He finished the year in a short sample with a 628 OPS, 684 OPS with the Braves, 649 overall in 48 games. So he only played 48 games. He wasn't that good. 83 OPS plus. But after he was traded from the Rays to the Braves, his first 19 games in Atlanta, he hit 309 with an 828 OPS and slumped like the last 5 games of the season. It was all such a small sample that you can kind of chop that way up any way you want to support the argument that Hae-Sung Kim is really good or Hae-Sung Kim might be declining and will never be the same again. He's a shortstop. I think he could still be a good defender. There are some questions about his arm. His arm strength was not the same returning from his shoulder surgery. That's certainly a major concern. But this is a guy who just 2 years ago was a 4-win player. The Athletics picking him to get 3 years, $50 million. That's probably about the high end of what I would be comfortable with. But if you could do a 1 year with a player option or maybe a 2 year with an option for a third, I think this could be really wise if you didn't want to go the Bregman route or you didn't win the bidding on Bo Bichette. I think the Tigers need to upgrade their offense. This is not a great class of shortstops. Hae-Sung Kim can still be a pretty good all-around player, and so that's, I think, why we keep talking about him.
Yeah, I don't have any pushback on that. I think that's a bidding war, and bidding not just in dollar amounts but in contract structure too, like you mentioned, that I feel like the Tigers could easily win. Like they could easily get them to be in the most advantageous offer that Kim would get, and he checks a lot of boxes, and at that years and at that price number, I think that's very manageable for really any budget of a major league team, even if we're not sure they are making a profit. So I think we've talked a lot about that. Here's another kind of more philosophical aspect to this, Cody, that I think deserves to be mentioned. We like Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter is a good player. He's a good left-handed bat. I'm not sure. I think at this point we can kind of write off some defensive development, getting to a certain level. Is there any thought to like getting in terms of being creative, is getting somebody to more or less like be your everyday right fielder, or if you if you can get creative with Riley Green in left field as well, because some of the corner outfield options. There are some more out there, and I guess we'll just start at the top too. Like, let's just bring in like a Kyle Tucker conversation. Why the hell not?
There's no rule that says the Tigers can't sign Kyle Tucker. No one's talking about it, I think, for the reason you just laid out. They have Kerry Carpenter. They have Riley Green. They have even guys like Winslow Perez and Matt Vierling and Zach McKinstry, who you think can help at the corner outfield. So, look, I don't think they're going to sign Kyle Tucker, but any corner outfield addition would require, I think, some level of greater roster shuffling, some trade that involves one of these core pieces. It's really fun to think about, but I'm just not of the belief that the Tigers are going to do it. Like I keep saying, they're not going to change the way they operate, and they're not going to pivot from their young hitters just because they made the playoffs 2 years in a row. So it'd be a lot of fun if something like that were to come down the pipeline, but it's hard to even talk about because it's kind of hard to know what the rest of the maneuvering would possibly look like. I think it would have to take a really unexpected trade to open up a corner outfield spot.
So we're not going to go down the Adolis Garcia route, just kind of get a guy with some postseason experience who's got, he's still an excellent fielder. Some of the bat metrics, excuses that have been made for some Tigers players. The bat metrics apply to Adolis Garcia. He was obviously non-tendered by the Rangers as they transition into kind of like their new post-World Series win era. Their price point, he's still got some pop. Like, any love there? Harrison Bader, any love there?
I think if you didn't have Matt Vierling and Winsel Perez, Harrison Bader would make a lot of sense, but I just don't think they're going to pay for that. Adolis Garcia, look, you can sign Suarez and Adolis Garcia, and they can combine with Riley Green to hit 120 homers and strike out 600 times, and we will have content to talk about all summer long, baby. His defense is intriguing. I just don't think this team is the right fit, man. I think this team needs contact and quality of at bat, and I just don't think that's going to be the route for them. The last fit on the Athletics big board linked to the Tigers, old friend Willie Castro, who at the trade deadline, I was like, he would kind of make a lot of sense. In some ways, he still would. He's kind of like a Winsel Perez if Winsel Perez could still play infield. Didn't have a great finish to his time with the Cubs, only an 89 OPS plus last year, but we know the bat's in there. All the things that used to bother me about against Willie Castro, I've forgiven them, although there can still be a lot of strikeout there, and it's not necessarily plus defense at all. But I don't know. If the Tigers wanted another versatile piece, he would make sense. My argument there is do they still need the versatile pieces? Like, they just got rid of Andy Ibanez, and they have Winsel Perez, and they have Jahmai Jones, and they have Max Anderson, Kevin McGonigal, How You Lead. Like, I'm not sure that's the box they need to check at this point in their competitive cycle. But when you start thinking, okay, if they don't get Bregman, if they don't get Bichette, they got to do something, right? Like, I don't think they can run back the exact same lineup. So that's why we're throwing out that name. That's why you can throw out Adolis Garcia. What about Byron Buxton, Kieran? You want to go trade for Byron Buxton? The Twins are tearing things down. And he's going to strike out a lot. But he's fun when he's healthy. I don't think they're going to trade for an often injured player. But Jarren Duran's still a trade name I like a lot.
Yeah.
Brendan Donovan's a hot name on the trade market. I would argue he's basically Zach McKinstry. Brendan Donovan's really good, but I don't think the Tigers necessarily have the perfect fit for him. But they got to do something. So send some ideas our way, because I the more I look at it, man, I'm just like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know. But they can't do nothing.
I guarantee you that Scott Harris is going to say to you and your fellow media members that Matt Vierling is like a free agent addition. That's a $3 million plus player that more or less might as well have not played in 2025. He's a right-handed bat. He's versatile defensively and including playing center field. So I guarantee you that statement will be said. There is, I guess, some validity to that, but it's also not sexy, just like the Willie Castro piece is also not sexy. Because here's the thing about free agency that I always try to frame everything around, is that you're obviously paying a premium to guys that make it to free agency. That's just part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You, a lot of times, are not going to get their best years. But in the case of some of these guys like Kyle Tucker, like the Bregmans of the world, the Bo Bichettes of the world, you're thinking I can still get pretty close to their best years while paying them knowing that, it's not going to look good on the other end. You bring in someone like Willie Castro or even these other utility guys. Are you paying for something close to their best years? I would argue that's more expensive in a way than what you would be, even though it was 1 year, $8 million is what the Athletic projected, than even paying up for some of those high-end players. I just don't think you're getting anything close.
I think
to
the middle of the market
is
a dangerous place to live, to your point. We're talking about this because right now the Tigers have not really been linked to any hitters. that part of the market is slower to develop, and it normally is. But they've been upfront and outspoken saying they're prioritizing pitching right now. I wonder if it's as simple as the Tigers ranked 11th in run scoring last year, and they ranked 17th in ERA. I'm not really counting on the Tigers having like the second best offense in baseball next year. But maybe they think that if Riley Green cuts down the strikeouts and Colt Keith takes a step forward and Vierling and or Meadows are healthy, that they can have the 8th best offense. And I think they have enough pitching talent. It should not be 17th again. I mean, there's always injuries you're not going to be able to predict, but you make a couple of the right signings, maybe they think they can get back to having a top 5 pitching staff. So you get the 8th best offense and the 5th best pitching staff, and you're one of the baseball's elite contenders, or right a notch below the elite, but you are right in the thick of things. And so as much as I and a lot of fans out there don't love the idea of not doing a big offensive move, wouldn't stun me if that's kind of how they're looking at things upstairs.
Part of the aspect of being a developing young players team, particularly young hitters, is that you are banking on your ability to get leaps out of these guys. So like, if you're a basketball fan, you're watching the Pistons right now, you're seeing what Jalen Duran is doing. Duran is doing, excuse me. Mixing up my sports here. Duran is doing.
Duran and Jalen Duran in the same town. Make it happen.
Yeah, that'll be great for the local radio to get those mixed up all the time. So that's obviously a leap. That's a guy who's a young player, and he's developed, and he's taken a massive leap so far this season. You're kind of hoping to get like a Duran type leap out of somebody, and like, almost not like every year, but like every couple of years. That's the whole point. And then also, I mentioned like the positions that are available and why it's kind of hard to fill these guys to be a free agency. It's not an accident that the last like 2 seasons, prior to this year, actually included this year, up the middle athletes, Cody. Talking about Brainer, talking about Clark, McGonigal too, if you want to throw it in there. Last year's drafts, like up the middle athletes is where the Tigers are trying to get young, or like get them young and then develop them into like, good to star players, because this right here, because they're hard to get otherwise. And so just wanted to keep that in mind as we move forward with this organization. So up the middle athletes, hard to come by. They're expensive.
I think that kind of says it all right there. I think that's all the mysteries of the world we can solve today. But we'll be with you all off season. Winter meetings just a couple weeks away, and eventually this stove is going to start heating up, and we're going to see some moves start coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely. All right, and you can follow along with us at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran_Steckley, pod page at Tiger Territory _. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube so we can continue to grow there. And a last reminder, TigerTerritoryShop.com. Black Friday sale, code Black Friday for 10% off. We appreciate everyone who supports the show. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.